Welcome to the Family Biz Show, everybody. My name is Michael Columbus from Family Wealth and Legacy in Rochester, New York. And today I'm super excited to bring Heather Smith to the show. And we're going to be talking about the hybrid heart, when human emotions meet tech. And so I'm really excited. StoryFile is the name of her business. We're in for a treat today. Welcome, Heather.
Thank you for having me, Michael. I'm excited.
Great. We're super excited that you're here. We have a tradition of when we have a new guest come on, we have found that very rarely does somebody start in what they're doing today. And so would you mind, maybe giving us the abbreviated Heather Smith story? Where did your career start? And then how did StoryFile come out of this?
Really short version. I started as a kind of a temporary or traveling exhibition designer.
Okay.
I would build exhibits in order to travel from location to location.
So trade shows, you would do the exhibits for people and stuff?
Not so much, no, more from museums and cultural events and things like that. So for some reason, I actually got into doing a lot of Holocaust exhibitions that were related around Holocaust and genocide, which may sound odd, but it was fascinating, completely enthralling. You can't, the more you learn and the more you talk to these people, first of all, the richer your life gets. You really realize the value of life itself and what it takes to be truly resilient. So these people had such amazing stories to tell us. What I was finding is I could only, like when you do a documentary, you do an interview, you talk to these individuals for hours on end, but you can only put in 5 minutes of the conversation. So what I wanted to do for future generations, because I realized my grandchildren would never have the opportunity to talk to these people or learn from them or have the conversations that I was having. And they've written autobiographies. They've done all of the narrative interviews, the oral history interviews for the Show Up Foundation. They've done movies. They've go into classrooms and they've talked to children for years and years and years. But there wasn't a way to replicate an actual conversation with them. And so I got to thinking this started in about 2009. I got to thinking, I need to find a way to replicate that experience of them going into a library, for example, giving a story, telling their story, and then answering the children's questions, because that was the moment that you see the magic in the audience. And I bet you anything, if any of you listeners could close your eyes and think of a lecture that you've been to in your lifetime and picture the minute that the audience was open to asking questions, the energy changes and all of a sudden everyone's engaged, everyone's interested, and all the hands go up. So it's not enough to just tell your story the way you want to tell it. People have questions. They have things on their own minds. They're curious about things that you might not have even talked about. So we needed to find some way to replicate that. I went to the Show Foundation. I formed a partnership with them and another technology company also, which happened to be at USC. I didn't know that when I started with them. And we ended up creating essentially the world's first way to replicate that conversation and that Q&A. Then I started taking those recordings of these individuals around the world, and people were using them and talking to them and having these conversations, and it was impacting them. But the one question kept coming up all the time. It was, can I do this myself? Can I do this with my family? Can I do this with my grandparents? Can I do this with my aunt? Can I do this with the founder of our company? I can't tell you, Michael, how many times I got that question. And, at some point, as sort of an entrepreneur, because I've been self-employed my whole life, you have to say, oh, you don't have to, you first you're knocking, then you're pounding, and then you're like breaking down the door. It's like, okay, you don't have to break down the door. So in 2016, 17, we started thinking, what would that look like if you were to make this ubiquitous for everyone to be able to do. And it had to be very different, obviously, than the studio recordings, the high studio recordings that we were doing with them. I mean, we go to great lengths to capture people's images and their stories to the point where we do volumetric shoots, which is probably capturing the most data of an individual that has ever been captured to date. So much data to the point that you can't use it right now, so we call it future proofing, because eventually they will find ways to use all of that data. But now it's growing, but it's somewhat still narrow. But people still, we did that for the historical figures for sure, because you never know, how 50 years from now you're going to have to be able to visualize it the way people are used to visualizing things. You can't play a CD of something, in the future that so anyway, what would it look like if we did it if we made it ubiquitous? And for that, it had to be automated, it had to be online. People had to be able to do it with whatever camera they had available to them. We don't have, video cameras so much, handheld video cameras anymore. It's all on your phone, your laptop, things like that. So we rebuilt and created StoryFile and completely rebuilt and we call it conversational video, but completely rebuilt being able to replicate a Q&A with a relative or a family member or a favorite teacher, or a mentor, with people that maybe you don't have the opportunity to talk to in person, that just people that have done really interesting things in their lives. And trust me when I say that everybody has a story. There is not one person on this planet that I could not learn something from.
So let me jump in, Heather. This is great. I really appreciate this. I just want to share this story real quick because it'll help the audience, get this. My father-in-law retired in his early 40s. Okay. Had a successful restaurant and a business before that. And how do I say this? I just was curious as an entrepreneur myself. I wanted to know, what did you sell the business for, and how much had you saved, and to be able to retire at such an early age and live the lifestyle that you did and do all the things that you did. It just, the math wasn't adding up. The questions were, there for me to answer or to ask. And so he shared all that information with me. And it was amazing. He retired in about 1982, 1983. And so now think about this from a standpoint of luck a little bit. The stock market went on a tear from 1983 to 2000, 1999, basically. It averaged about 16% a year during that period of time. Crazy. Just an unheard of bull market that we had at that time. And that's when he retired. Now, he didn't plan it that way. He didn't know what was going to happen. But everything kind of worked out. And the reason why I'm sharing the story is because, I was talking to my wife about her father's story, and she goes, "How do you know that?" I never knew that. Like, I asked the question. Yeah. And so go back to, what are the questions? How did we do things? And, what is our history and what is your history and all that stuff? We have these questions. And, and StoryFile provides a way, if I understand it, what you've got here is an automated way of asking questions and capturing the answers so that people can see and learn from the past.
Yeah. It's not just, I will tell you though, it's not just recording it. You don't have to watch 5 hours of this individual's recording, and listen to everything. You could, if you wanted, but it's meant to create conversations with this individual. And when we create a conversation, when we ask our own questions of individuals, we connect with them differently than passively listening to something. So, and you also have a chance to maybe go in a little bit deeper, depending on how many questions they answered, and just find out a little bit more. Like, tell me more about that. Or you didn't mention where you were at this time or how old you were. How old were you when this happened? For example, when did you get married? Or tell me about your wedding when you said, and they tell you all about the, the wedding, where it was, maybe how many guests there were, who married, da da da. But they don't tell you, what were you thinking before you went down the aisle, like right before you got married, or was there any doubts that you had going into it? Like, did you get cold feet and things like that? Or what was the funniest thing that happened at the wedding? They don't tell you all those little details. So you need to be able to have those opportunities to ask those questions and really get at it. And StoryFile offers you that because they ask all those questions. And then you can have these conversations. And I guarantee you, you will have conversations differently at different stages in your life. Because at 25, we ask a certain litness, we'll ask certain questions. At 35, we're going to ask different questions. At 55, we're going to ask even different questions than we had asked earlier. And I think that's the thing about losing someone that you love so dearly is by the time that happens, you do have a lot of questions after that you didn't think of necessarily to ask earlier on in their life. I can't emphasize enough how many people that have you heard of that keep a recorded message on their phone of their parent just so they can hear their voice. And it's such a gift to give to your generations and your family. You really have no idea what a gift it is. And you may think, oh, this is really narcissistic, and oh, I don't have a story to tell, and da da da. I guarantee you, if you've lived on this planet for any amount of time, you have a story to tell. And the people that love you, that are close to you, will want to remember that story and be able to remember your life.
Yeah.
So I would urge everybody to do it.
Love it. And so for our audience, because this is the Family Biz Show, and we're talking about family businesses, over and over again, when a business owner is successful and going from generation 1 to generation 2, it's a huge milestone. And
it's often a very difficult milestone. You probably know the statistic. I grew up in a family business. The statistics of the second generation taking over and being successful at running that business and keeping it alive are very low.
Right.
Very low.
Right. And so, and part of that, we talk about those statistics, and I share it with family businesses. They all know that any business, regardless of whether it's family or not, the statistics to get past year 10 in any business, regardless of family or whatever, is tough. So it's not just about a family business statistic. I'd like to let people know that, because once you get past year 10 in any business, you're successful. You have done wonderful, good things. In order to get it to the next generation, there is lots of work that needs to happen for those things to happen. But what's really interesting is generation 2 is talking with generation 1. They learn from generation 1. They get to see it. But the odds are that generation 1 may not be around to tell generation 3 what was going on when they started the business and what was happening. And I have a client comes to mind right now, and they had some very special, unique things that Grandpa did to start the business. Grandma and Grandpa did it together, and they're not with us any longer. They died in their 60s. And so they died early. And so all of those special stories I work to try to extract from their children, but they don't remember them exactly the same way that their parents did. Absolutely. And so for this purpose, there's a family business in Rochester. They're an amusement park, Seabreeze Amusement Park. They were around during the Spanish flu. They were in business when the Spanish flu flu was here. So here's a family that they don't remember those things. But, could you imagine if somebody had recorded and talked to, and we didn't have the ability to do it back then, but the people that were, that owned the business, what they were doing at that time, what they were thinking during the Spanish flu, and then be able to record what they were doing through this pandemic and be able to compare those notes as a family?
Yeah, amazing.
Be pretty
And
powerful.
yeah, and a lot of people don't really they a lot of naysayers would say, oh well, the circumstances were so different then, and we had technology, we had this and we had that. Actually, life is pretty predictable, and it's pretty there are universal things that we do as human beings all the time that work, and that you may have to tweak it a little bit for a given environment, but there are basic things that have always worked and will continue to work. And, to learn those is, like I said before, it's a gift.
Yeah. In the family business, let's dig a little deeper into the, how a family business could utilize this technology for them. And I think you'll connect with some of the things that I'm saying, and some of them you'll just help me to take it down where you want to go with it. But I believe that the families that do end up making it to that generation 3 or 4 or beyond, they do it because the family is driven by a purpose beyond profit. And that is one of the, once there's a purpose beyond profit, and we can think about this as I'm just a steward of this purpose right now, and we utilize the business as part of that, it makes a giant difference. Now it's my time to be the steward of it. And when the family has a set of values that they can connect to that purpose and pull all those pieces together, now when we start talking about capturing the story of G1, sometimes when G1, generation 1 started the business, it was because they needed to eat. They needed to put food on the table for the family, but then it morphed into something bigger than them.
Yeah.
How could a family business utilize this for themselves?
Just hearing those stories about what was important to you, what were those values, what was your purpose at the time? Okay, 10 years later, it's successful. Now, what is your purpose? Why do you get up in the morning and do what you do? Did you enjoy what you did? And things, what would you have done differently? What do you think your legacy is? And what would you like to see happen to the business in the future? What do you think I should pay attention to? What do you think is important for us to concentrate on? Always, where's our North Star, basically?
Yeah.
And if you're lucky enough to really have a family business, and I mean, really have a family business completely owned on your own, you're right. You have to look at it as your stewardship. You are the gatekeeper for only a period of time,
Right.
And your purpose is to leave that in better shape than you found it, hopefully. But that you need those past generations to reinforce that and to really drive it home, and you really have to feel it. It has to be in you. The issue with, I have some family business owners that do want to pass and they do story files, but they do them with the intent of, I want my kids to really know my story, know what I went through, know the values, know what I would like them to think about, and the purpose, like you said, and the values. I don't think that they're really at their age right now. I don't think that they're going to be asking me those questions. And it might be too late. God forbid I get diagnosed with, I don't know what, I'm 55, and it's a reality. And if you don't have that legacy written down or videoed, I would encourage you to video it, simply because nonverbal communication is a lot of how we communicate. So you don't get the full picture. when you write an autobiography. And it's not even just audio capturing it. You need video to capture it. You need to look into that person's eyes, see them tell the story in order to fully connect with that individual and feel the values, feel how important that was to them and why. Yeah, I think passing that on is critically important to the success, the generational success of a particular business. Absolutely.
So I want to talk about other ways StoryFile is used and things that you've done with it. But before we do that, I do want, is it just storyfile.com is the website?
Yeah, you can go to storyfile.com. And it's storyfile.com/life if you want to go directly to life, or you can get on it through storyfile.com.
Okay. So storyfile.com/life, and that's will take you to what we're talking about here. And you told me at the beginning, and I know prices will change in time and whatnot, but we're talking about an insignificant amount. When you're talking about the power that you're bringing to especially family businesses and talking about, capturing that legacy and capturing those questions and those things that could be so important. It was under $1,000 to get started on this process. And it's just silly. I really encourage people to be looking at capturing their story, whether you use StoryFile or some other way. I have been telling people to capture this for years. I just think it's so important because it's a friend of mine, a colleague said, when somebody dies, it's like a library burning. All of those stories, all of those tales, all of that knowledge is then gone. And so, you only get this chance to do it. And it's usually too late for most people. Most people don't do this. And I know that, but the ones that do, it's so powerful.
So powerful. And you're giving of time. That's what you're giving. It takes you time to do this. You're right. But what you're giving to those generations is it's the gift of life. It is. It's that whole library.
Yeah. You mentioned something before we started about grandchildren, and I think it's really important that people start thinking about this not from your perspective, or maybe not even from your kids, but what are the grandchildren? Why do you want to do this for your grandchildren?
Because they will ask different questions at 20 and 35, and then different questions at 55 they will have for you. And you won't be there when they're 55. The chances of you being there when they're 55 are very low. Although I do have one client that says that we're all going to be living to 120.
Oh, I say 125. I like that person.
He's the very fascinating work that they've been doing. It's called Reboot, and they're amazing. But anyway, you just have different questions. You go through life and you hit different stages in your life and at different things, obviously. And it's inevitable. We learn through living and we learn through experience. Then we have different questions. We can relate to people differently. And those kids are going to have the same questions that we have now. But what if they could actually have them answered? What if they could talk to their grandparents when they do have those questions? Or just even from the fact of remembering them. Do you have I often do this in lectures. I have the entire audience close their eyes and I want them to picture a loved one that has passed away. And then I ask them to picture how amazing it would be to just be able to say hi, have that just, just a conversation with that individual and remember who they were. And then that person obviously meant something to you because they popped into your head first, right? How about what it would be like to introduce that person to your children and your grandchildren who will never have the opportunity to meet that person who influenced your life? We are all products. Everyone on this planet is products of who lived before us. And our past, our descendants and our generations before us, we're all a product. Our identity is a product of that.
Right.
We should know as much about that and keep that and pass that on as we can.
It's really interesting. I want to make sure that people are capturing what's different about StoryFile, because I'm not sure that we capture it. So StoryFile, the foundation of it is the video and all and thousands or hundreds of questions that you're being asked, that somebody's being asked. But the delivery then is artificial intelligence. And that's the I think we skipped that a little bit. And so it's that artificial intelligence that works through your system that allows you to have a conversation with this person that doesn't exist any longer, that's not on this planet any longer.
But it is very important that we don't edit or manipulate anything that you've said. And that's very important to us as far as, with regard to StoryFile Life. There are several companies out there that will build you an avatar that looks exactly like you. They'll capture your voice, they'll do a clone of your voice, and they can make you say anything that they want, basically. We do not feel that. I don't want my story told in some other different way that some computer decides to tell it. I want to be able to tell it myself with my body language. For example, I just put my hand up and down, and that tells you something intuitively. It tells you something about me. There's no computer alive that will be able to duplicate or replicate the body language that I have when I'm expressing or telling a story.
Yeah.
And so it does make a difference to be authentic and to record your authentic self whatever way you want. You can do it in a bikini, you can do it in your dining room, you can do it in at your living room, anywhere, outside, your favorite chair. It doesn't matter. You can do it from bed. It doesn't matter. It's passing on you, and it's having those future generations look into your eyes and hear and know exactly that I've said that. I've told this story, and this is coming from me, and it's not messed with. It's not edited. There's nothing that's manipulated in it. And I think that's key to what we do. And the other thing that's different is that you're actually having a conversation. You're not just passively watching somebody tell their story, which was very important to us to do.
Love it. So it's taking technology that's available today and utilizing it. I'm on the StoryFile Life page right now, and it's really interesting. It's great because William Shatner joined you to do his StoryFile and allowed you're using it on the webpage there. But what you say on here is, in the past, and I think about my mom with all of the photo albums that she has, and we used to do everything through photo albums, and you would guess. Like I have a picture behind me of my grandfather, and my father and uncle have both debated as to whether that was really him or not. Because it was a young picture of them.
So I'll tell you what the great thing about StoryFile is. So not in this version of StoryFile Life, but soon. And if you did do the $500 package, you'd be able to do this when it comes out. We want people to be able to do it what we're calling a talking album. And just exactly what you said. I show this picture, and I'm going to now describe what's happening. I'm going to describe where this picture was taken, what the story behind it, why I kept this picture, why it means so much to me, who's in the picture. You can say whatever you want about that picture. And that data, what we're calling box tagging, that voice data goes with that picture then. So if I pull up, do you have any pictures of your grandparents' wedding? That picture would show up, and we would hear you talking about who's in that photo and what was happening. That's going to be an amazing feature, I think, for a lot of people, because it gives you a lot of, it allows you to bring in your past relatives who didn't have the opportunity to do a StoryFile Life, And it allows you to talk about them and tell your future generations a little bit about who you know and who was involved in your life and why they were important to you.
Great. We do for a lot of our clients, one of the first stories that we start to integrate is we do a family meeting, and I ask the current generation that's doing the estate planning work, I ask them to describe to their children how the estate plan was done between their parents and them.
Mm.
And what did they like about that estate planning process? What didn't they like about the estate planning process? Which, why we're all together today. What did you learn about money from your parents? What did you learn about money from your grandparents? And when we start asking those questions, I just did this. It was last year. We had a family that we did the family meeting, and the mom, the current matriarch of the family, to cry, and she was like, "We never talked about money in our family. We thought we were going to be broke forever because we just didn't know what the next day was going to hold and what was going to happen and where we're at." And here's a family that, they broke 7 figures as a family. They have some wealth, not exorbitant, crazy wealth, but she couldn't spend.
Yeah.
And the kids started to cry because they're like, "You're always thinking and feeling that you were going to be broke because of where you came from and how you did things." And oh my gosh, and we get it. That conversation sparked many other conversations, which was really helpful. And the ones that came from that is that they are now taking a family vacation all together, because what the kid said is, "Mom, the money doesn't mean anything to us. We want to do things with you." And so now mom has the ability to spend some of that money to do things with the family that they would have never done.
Think about that, having that conversation earlier in their life and how it would have changed them all. It might not have, but you never know. And thank God they've had that. Thank God you started that conversation, because you knew the questions to ask. They might not have known those stories had they not gotten into a conversation with her, and just kind of, it led them to that story, because they might not have asked specifically. So that's what StoryFile allows you to do, is to have those kinds of conversations. You could even have a really difficult conversation with a loved one, and they don't even have to know that you've had it, and then once you've had that conversation with them, maybe if they still are alive, you can have a completely different conversation with them. For example, mentors and experts in fields, they get asked the same questions over and over, practically every day.
Right.
And they know them. They know all of them. What if I could have that conversation just with you, wherever I am in the world, whatever time I want? I ask those questions. I get that base knowledge, right? Now, if I met you in person, having that base knowledge, how different would our conversation be? How much more important and deep and really getting at it and learning would that conversation be? Tremendous, wouldn't it? So those are the types of conversations that StoryFile Life can enable and allow you to have.
So inside of the family business world, the thriving family enterprise world, there's just there's stories about wealth. There's stories about the business. There's stories about family values. Lots and lots of different ways that you could do this eventually with could somebody like Story Life walk me through, that's how many questions or how many hours of video is captured in something like that?
So StoryFile Life, if you did it, if you did the product on your computer, your grandchild filmed you on their phone or whatever you wanted to, however you wanted to do it, we've got available to you right now about 1,600 questions. And I know that sounds daunting. But obviously, unless you were a World War II veteran, you're not going to answer that line of questioning. So there are a lot of very specialty scripts in that, but there are some things you can go into a topic and you can pick individual questions, or you can just select all. You can answer as many questions as you want. In a bit, another iteration of this is going to have follow-up questions that people can add to the interview on the spot. So if I wanted you to clarify something that you said in an answer, and I'm a grandchild and I'm interviewing you, I would have the opportunity to ask follow-up questions. So that's coming down the pike as well. So you don't have to answer you don't have to do it all at once. You can do it, different days. There are some things that you might want to pay attention to, like, do I look the same? Am I wearing the same thing? Am I capturing myself in the same environment? Or you could say, I don't care about that. I'll do it wherever I want to do it. Whatever answer we have some people that want to do the same 250 or 300 questions every 10 years of their life, and just have that kind of I want to see how different, if I ask you the same question about your values at 25, what were they then at 65? And different things. How cool would it be to be able, you're 35 and you talk to your 16-year-old daughter or 15-year-old daughter talks to you at 16. It's or even, we have one parent that wanted to do StoryFiles with their children before they went to college. And then she wanted to do another StoryFile when they got out of college and they finished, just so they could see the difference in their thinking and their answers during that period of time, that short period of time even. So there's a lot, you can do a lot of things with it if you just, your imagination leads you.
Unbelievable. And you can answer a lot in 5 minutes.
Oh,
and then there's other questions you could dig deeper and put it all together. I love this. What haven't we talked about that we should? You know what I want to talk about? I'm sorry. I want to go back to right where we started. We talked about the exhibits, because now that I have the picture, I can see it a little differently and I understand it a little differently now that we've had this conversation. But when you're talking about doing an exhibit at a museum, and you did it for the Holocaust, what you set up when you started to switch over this way of doing things, you set up live conversations with Holocaust survivors through this AI chat. And that's really what, that's pretty powerful. So what
it was interesting because when I started this, so it was 2009, and we had our first prototype that we built that we were testing in the public in early 2013, Don't forget, Skype had been around since about 2007, I think, but it didn't really become ubiquitous until 2012. So it was hysterical because we would go in and the people would come in the room and we would tell them, this is a video recording of an individual that you can ask this individual any question you want. You can have a conversation with them. And we just want your feedback. We would have people that would actually thank that person, like thank them for talking to them and taking the time. And you don't know how important this is to my grandchild, and just go into it. We had women that would literally fall in love and ask these individuals, where are they? Are they single? We had people that would thank them. When they were leaving, they thank you for talking to me. And it was interesting because they really thought that individual was there.
Yeah.
Just because there was no other reference. It was just, they thought they were talking to a person on Skype. So it's fascinating. It was fascinating to see, and how people, once they get into it, it might seem a little strange. It's like talking to Siri, you hold the button down and you ask a question at first, but then once you get into it, you lose that sense of technology. You lose all the technology around you. And it's just about you having this conversation that seems And if this person's done a lot of questions, like answered a lot of questions, they've got a very large database. You can continue these conversations for a very long time and ask a lot of different things about a lot of different subjects. It's going to be a fascinating world when everyone has a story file. Everyone on this planet will have a story file, their own story file.
That's pretty
Like
cool.
you would have one and you would put it on your LinkedIn and you would have a bio of you and you answer just a standard 40 questions about yourself, about your bio, like, and you put it on your LinkedIn and people can actually ask you questions about your life. What's your education? You know, why do you do what you do? Da, 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 where do you work? Things like that. You automatically feel like I know you, like I get a sense of you rather than just reading your bio and seeing a picture of you.
Love it. And that's starting to happen a little tiny bit with LinkedIn. You mentioned LinkedIn where they, you can put a little video and say, hi, 30 seconds or whatever. What you're talking about is, be able to have a conversation with that person. You'd be able to know whether you want to work with that person pretty quickly. That's pretty cool.
Yep. Yeah. Think of it for hiring people. You can actually go on, they don't have to know. You can you have a conversation with these individuals, and then you can call in and have interviews with people that you really want to have interviews with, because you've already done that. It's not just looking at a CV or a resume. It's actually asking that person, seeing how they talk about their life and, how they communicate, and seeing if you have that kind of rapport with them and you want them to come in. So,
love it. Love it. And the family business. So like, I'm thinking about this from a family business perspective, and a couple people are coming to mind right now. One is, they're in their 70s, still in the business day to day. And they have a granddaughter that hasn't, graduated from high school yet. Okay. And her parents, in between, generation 2 is running the business and doing things. We have no idea whether that granddaughter will want to be in the business 10 years from now. But there's a possibility that within the next 10 years, they may not be with us any longer. So right now is the time to answer all of those questions. And whether it's your granddaughter that you're answering the questions for about the business, or it's whoever is running the business in the future, because a business can be infinite. We are all finite. Human beings are finite. The business, if you so choose, can be infinite if you've done the work to put together a leadership team.
But your influence on that other generation doesn't have to be finite.
Right.
That's the thing. You can tell the stories about it. You can ask the incoming CEO or whoever's running it, takes it over. They want to know about liquidity. How did you deal with liquidity, like not having enough?
Right. When you didn't have enough cash, how did you deal with it?
What did you do? Yeah. What did you do when you had surpluses? What would you like the business to have done or do with those surpluses? Would you expand? Would you do this? How do you feel about all of that? I mean, it's an opportunity for you to have some sort of influence on that generation.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you do it? You leave that for them so they know.
I'm so excited. It's funny because through the years, just so you know, I have interviewed other people that believe in the power of story. And I'm a firm believer in the power of story. I get that. But having a platform that was affordable and as thought-filled as what you've put together, really, I haven't seen that. I mean, I know people can go to your recording studio and have the white glove treatment and have professional interviewers and all that. And that's an option that's available through StoryFile. But what you've created through this package that's $500 right now is pretty incredible to do, a lot of this stuff.
We really wanted it to be ubiquitous, and we wanted everybody to be able to do it. Things like this and telling your story and passing on that, influencing future generations, that shouldn't be something that just the 1% of the world can do.
Right.
Sorry.
What's crazy is there's, somebody that is worth, more than 7 figures, not Jeff Bezos rich,
Yeah.
A lot of times we don't feel that we could do those things. And so even there, it's like, this is like at $500, it doesn't matter whether you're worth $40,000 or whatever. This could be a Christmas gift, or a Hanukkah gift, or whatever, Mother's Day, Father's Day. I love it.
Absolutely.
I'm thinking one other thought. So you've got access to over 1,600 questions. Sometimes when we're talking about business, I hear you asking the business focused questions. Inside of that 1,600 questions, my gut says that it's more focused about my life.
But your life your career is a huge part of your life.
So what I'm thinking is, if I wanted to do a business life focused, and that's all about, so that if people wanted to do that, could I have 2 story files?
Yes.
Or would I just maybe spend more time? If I have unlimited conversations, then maybe it's just you still could do it in one story file. Is that what you're saying? I'm just, what's the best way to do that, I guess?
You could have different story files if you want. You could do one for a business community, for your that, and you would just have to use a different login and possibly a different email right now. Or call us up and ask us to tweak it for you. Go through our customer service and tell them that you want to do different ones. We will have the ability to do several and put it on your timeline. But the StoryFile Life, you're right, is focused on family heritage and legacy. But your career is a very big part of that. So there are a lot of questions about your career and about your values and about, experiences that you've had or may have had, and a lot of opportunities to tell stories that you want to tell. So you can do a public facing one, and you can do a private one, which is, I think, what you're asking also. And you share it with whomever you want to share it with. Everything is private on this particular site. There, in the future, there may be another vehicle, a StoryFile vehicle, where you can put all of that on public and make it public to anyone. That's one use. This particular StoryFile Life is a private, so you have to invite people to actually share your StoryFile. You can make it public if you post it, like, for instance, if you post it on your Facebook page, that would be making it public right now.
Okay.
For you, but you can keep it private. So yeah, you can do different story files for different audiences. You can do private, public, whatever you want. Absolutely.
So interesting. I love what you're doing. So do you have a goal, or as Jim Collins calls it, the big, hairy, audacious goal for StoryFile?
Everyone will have a story file of their own. I would say 10 years. Give me 10 years.
I love it. Bill Gates wanted to have a computer on everybody's desk.
Yeah.
And that happened. That has definitely happened.
Conversational video, what we've built, what we've created, conversational video in general, will be ubiquitous. I mean, it will be used in your daily life, and StoryFile Life is a part of it. It's that the personal part, and people will be able to communicate with you via your StoryFile Life, or via your StoryFile.
You're actually part of Web 3.0 with what you're doing, putting AI in there. And this is really, really cutting edge. So excited to have you with us.
Thank you.
Again, everybody, storyfile.com is the website. Heather Smith was our guest today. My name is Michael Columbus, Family Wealth and Legacy in Rochester, New York, and you've been listening to the Family Biz Show. Please make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss future episodes. And we look forward to speaking with you again in the near future.
Thank you so
everybody.
Much. And you're doing a fabulous job. These families are very fortunate to have you supporting them. Thank you. Great. Very lucky.